Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 biggest fundamental mistakes that all AoE2 players make. These mistakes have nothing to do with mechanical ability, how fast you're playing, or how many hands you have. These mistakes are purely mistakes of the mind. They're a problem with our thought process and how we approach Age of Empires 2 from a strategic perspective. Before I show you guys the list, I'm going to quickly let you guys know that I'm hosting a tournament, Hera's Coliseum. It's in my Discord, all the information's there. It's $300 prize pool at the bare minimum that I'm putting down. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm going to leave a link to the signups in a pinned comment below, and you guys can check that out if you want to play in it. It's open to all ELOs, and I'm just doing it to help grow the community. All right, with all that said, let's go ahead and hop into this top 5 list. Alright, starting off at number 5, we've got actively taking fights when your economy is a mess. This is a concept that I see go wrong in a lot of my coaching sessions, and I actually had one on stream the other day, and so a lot of people that were watching that stream saw that mistake in real time. And this is a mistake that's made across all levels as well. And the point here is that when you decide that you want to take a fight, it has to be under your conditions. That is how you get ahead and put the pressure on your opponent. If I fight when my economy is a mess and I'm choosing to fight, then I'm focusing my attention on a battle of which the outcome barely matters because my economy back home is collapsing, and that should have been the priority. So what you should do instead is take care of your economy. Make sure that all your villas are working. Make sure that you're producing military, you're producing villagers, you're spending your resources. Then when all that's good, then you spend the next couple minutes taking a fight. This way, when you take a fight, your enemy has to react and he's forced to take the fight, and his economy might not be perfect. His economy might be kind of messy, and regardless of the outcome of that fight, you will pull ahead because your economy was working perfectly before you took this fight. This is a top tier concept that a lot of people just don't quite grasp. So before you choose to fight your opponent, fix your economy and your situation at home, and then take on the challenge. Don't take on the challenge when you've got 10 challenges waiting for you at home, okay? Alright, moving on to number 4 for the fundamental mistakes in Age of Empires 2. It is not breaking out of your walls in Castle Age. This is, again, something I've seen. I do a lot of coaching, guys. This is something I see all the time, especially amongst the lower level players. You guys set up the walls in Feudal Age, which is correct. We definitely like to wall up our base and play safe. But then in Castle Age, the walls that we make, like the square palisade walls, it's like a prison. It's illegal to expand beyond the borders of those walls. They would literally finish their entire base and their entire expansion, 3TC, military production, inside like a 20 by 20 cubicle. It's like they're confined in the space and they can never break out. And I'm just like, bro, delete the palisade wall, take 4 villas out, make a town center, and you can expand your base while still keeping yourself well protected because you have extra town centers. Now listen, I'm not saying when you get the Castle Age, delete all your walls, they're useless. I'm saying let's find a balance. We'll keep some of the walls, but we'll break little sections of it to expand with town centers to further our base layout and give us a little bit more space while keeping us well protected, because a town center near an open wall is still completely fine. And listen, if you're completely opposed to breaking your wall, you want to keep yourself 100% protected, just make a few gates. All right, it's not my preferred tactic. I like to just expand, but just make a few gates so your units can at least come and go as they see fit. Moving on to number 3, this is a small mistake, but I felt the need to mention it because I think it's really important. And when this happens, like when this mistake happens, it's a huge deal. And that is keeping the relics at the front of your base when you know you're going to get pushed and you know there's a risk of losing them. This is most often seen in Arena, where a player could collect 5 relics, but because his opponent didn't contest the relics, they have a stronger economy. They went for more villagers instead of bunks, and so they get the initial advantage in early imp. So then they go for a push, they break a little part of his base, see the monastery, kill it, take all 5 relics, and laugh in their opponent's face because he spent all his time getting 5 relics and the opponent was able to take it in like a matter of minutes and take all 5 relics. And that's a huge swing because you went from 5 relics to 0 for you and 5 for the enemy, and that is a 10 relic swing, essentially pretty much switching the entire game's favor and completely giving all the advantage to your opponent. Even if you're able to hold the push, you lost your relics and therefore are in a losing situation in the late game. This is, however, also seen in Arabia, where sometimes you take the relics in Castle Age, and sometimes it is correct to just make the monastery near the front of your base because you're trying to get the relics faster, but then you pick up the relics and then your opponent goes like heavy on knights and pushes you, and then they can just target your monastery. And even if they don't steal your relics, they at least kill your monastery and leave the relics out in the open, and it can be kind of uncomfortable reclaiming those relics, especially when your opponent still has units around that area. So at some point, if you know you're going to get pushed, make a monastery at the back, take like 30 seconds of your time, transfer the relics from the front to the back, and so you make it that if you get pushed on the front, you can give up some ground without sacrificing your late game. All right, moving on to number 2. This is a fundamental mistake that I swear a lot of us make. Even some pros make it. And this is showing your unit transition too early. There is a number of ways in which you can show your unit transition too early. I'll give you a few. Number 1 is showing your production building. So like if I'm going scout and I'm hunt on Arabia, I'm fully walled. And then I want to switch to CA, 3 ranges. And I make those CA, or the ranges, sorry, at the front of my base. My opponent walks by with a scout. He's like, oh, he's 3 ranges with hunts. I think he's going to go CA. But if I just make those 3 ranges in the middle of my base so that an enemy unit that's walking through my walls cannot see them, my opponent has no idea that I'm doing CA. I could be doing knights. I could be doing light cav. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But if I just show it to my opponent, then the cat's out of the bag. My opponent knows everything of my plan, what units I'm going to go for. They can prepare counters. They can wall up, all kinds of nasty stuff. And so hiding your transition is super important. But there's other ways that players show their transition too early. This is by having upgrades on their scout when they're going knights, and then just showing the scout to the opponent. The opponent watches my videos, takes my coaching. They know to always click enemy units. They click the scout. They see it's got bloodlines, armor, and attack. And they're like, okay, this guy's definitely going knights. This guy's a joke. I got 3 barrack pikemen. Nearly told me to counter knights. And then he loses the game anyways because knights counter pikes in early castlage. But you know what I'm saying? Like the knight player still showed his transition early in that scenario. And that's definitely not how you want to go about it. And then the last way to show your transition too early is in late game when you're going for a big elephant switch. You're trying to end the game. It's been a trash war for 3 hours and a half. And you've had enough. You're switching to elephants because you've got a bunch of gold saved up. And then as you're making the elephants, usually you want to wait till you have 40 and then show them one shot. But some players just send in one by one, telling the opponent, hey, I'm going to switch to elephants. You better prepare some counter units. And then they prepare the counter units. And then the elephant player loses all his gold. And this transition is meaningless. So keep an eye out. When you're going for a transition, try to hide it. It's a strategy game at the end of the day. The more our opponent is kept guessing, the better it is for us. All right, before I show you guys number 1, the biggest misconception or biggest fundamental mistake in AoE2, I've got a honorable mention that isn't really with the game. It's more or less with the psychology of it, I guess. There's a common sentiment where people think that just because they're higher elo that they should win the game. Guys, this is not true at all. And think of it, this wouldn't be true in a pro tournament where you go in and you have 200 elo higher than your opponent. For example, I'm 2k9, opponent's 2k7. Doesn't matter. They're still a pro. They're still a top player. Anyone can beat anyone in this game. The elo system is just a representation of the possibilities of the statistics, but anyone in a single game can beat any other player. If they play correctly and opponent makes enough mistakes, you can win. For example, I've lost a T90. I've deleted my town center in a tournament and I've lost a T90. The probability of that happening, 1 in a billion, maybe. I'm just kidding. He can probably beat me more than that. But the possibility of that happening is definitely slim, but it can happen, and a higher elo player can always lose. So don't think just because you're higher elo that the game is for granted, that you go in there and it's a guaranteed win. You don't even have to try. You still have to play correctly, guys. Elo, it's just the statistics of probability, nothing more, nothing less. All right, moving on to the number 1 fundamental mistake that all AoE2 players make. And this is something I even made against ACCM. It's a huge mistake in a pro tournament. And it's linked with another point on this list, which is showing the transition too early, okay? And this is countering a phantom unit. That's what I like to call it, okay? This is when you make a counter unit based on something that you expect your opponent to do without any confirmation. This is such a crucial mistake because it leads to unnecessary losses. And I'll give you the example that I faced in my game against ACCM. I forget the tournament, but I'll never forget this game. It was haunting me forever. I was basically going scouts up against him going scouts as well. And he was some CA civ. He was Tatars, I believe, and I was Franks. And with Franks, I'm really scared of cav archers, because if I go knights and my opponent has cav archers, especially on a hilly map like Gold Rush, which it was, the knight player usually loses. So I was thinking, okay, I don't see his ranges, but I know ACCM's a top tier player. He's probably hiding his ranges, not showing me the transition. So I was like, okay, assuming he's on the range transition, I'm going to go skirmishers. Expecting him to go CA, I'm going to go skirmishers, and I'm going to surprise them with skirmishers and ballistics really fast. So I did just that. I made a range, started making skirms, cut my knight production, and went for elite skirm, bodkin, and ballistics. All before I saw that he was going CA. And then when castlage hit, it turned out that he is not going CA. He is going knights, camels, and step lancers. And I was just sitting there. I think I made like 6 skirm and a range. I didn't get to make bodkin ballistics. I wasn't that stupid. But I made 6 skirms and a range, and that was completely wasted because the CA were a complete phantom in this case. They were not real. They were just in my head like the other voices, and I lost the game because I wasted so many resources on a useless transition that didn't help me at all. ACCM rolled me with camels, knights, got head in economy, and I stood no chance. And the fun thing about it is the CA EA ended up coming later in the game, and I couldn't counter them because I was far behind in economy. And so the irony of it all was that I needed the skirms later and not earlier, and that cost me the game. So the lesson from this game is don't make counter units to an enemy unit that you don't see. And I see this all the time, especially when you're up against a civ that's notorious. Let's say Goths, they're notorious for husk rolls. And then I just start making, I don't know, longswords randomly to counter husk rolls. And then the Goth player's like, oh, I'm actually going knights. I'm going to go knights, then boom, and then make infantry later. And you're on longswords randomly in early castle age, and that's not going to do much. So yeah, the Goth player gets a huge advantage and just wins the game because you countered a phantom unit that was not real. All right, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys found it interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.